sitting on some Cali weed, I think it's time to burn. Pull up in some shit to put in dry, you gotta learn. Cocaine cowboy, you better wait your turn. Michael Corleone, money come.
All right, so the Arizona Cardinals. I'm not real excited about this team this year. I think this team has a lot of things that they need to address in the sense of their future. Now, I think their defense as a unit is not terrible, and I think it can keep them in some games. But I think their offense is going to be the real issue. Now, you say their offense, they still have David Johnson, and they still have Larry Fitzgerald, two, pretty good players in this league. Fitzgerald continues to get older and older every year, but at the same time, he continues to perform. And then David Johnson will be back healthy this year. I think, the big key this last offseason was the fact of Carson Palmer going ahead and retiring and ending his career. You might have felt like you could have got maybe a year or two more out of him, and then that would have transitioned to Rosen. But that's not the case here. So, the Cardinals had to do, there's a lot of things going on with the Cardinals. Obviously, Bruce Arians is gone. I think Bruce Arians retired, and Carson Palmer's out. So, as much as, if you're a Cardinals fan and you're saying, well, we still have Larry, we still have David Johnson. We added a veteran quarterback in Mike Glennon and Sam Bradford. They should be able to game manage to these playmakers. Not a terrible offensive line, all right offensive line. A lot of new guys that you've brought in as well on the offensive line with Shipley and Apuda. But, in the defense is not terrible. I just think there's a lot of new things going on this year. New coach, new quarterback. You don't have the veteran of Carson Palmer there. So I just think it's going to be a tough year. Also, in the division that you're in, I think the Seahawks are, on the way down, but I think the 49ers are on the way up. And I think the Rams are definitely on the way up. So, I just don't think it's going to be that good of a year for the Cardinals. Talking about this offseason, some of the things that they did, obviously they brought in Sam Bradford, Mike Glennon. Those guys will be competing for that job. Bryce Butler from the Cowboys. Jason Puig and Andre Smith are some of the guys that got added to the offensive line. Marcus Williams from Houston's came over as a cornerback. Another cornerback, Ben Kirk, also came over from Dallas. So, and then some of the losses that they had, Justin Bethel, Alex Boone, Carlos Dansby, Tyra Matthew, Troy Nicholas, Frosty Rucker, Tremont Williams, Jared Valhill. So they lost a good amount in the offseason, a good amount to the offensive line, a little bit in the secondary, a little bit on the defense. Carlos Dansby, he's a free agent. Alex Boone was another good player for them. So they lost a little bit this last offseason. Let's talk about the roster that they have now. Obviously, David Johnson, we know what he brings to the table. If he can get the ball thrown to him, and I think Sam Bradford, he's obviously a dink and dunker type guy. So I think if the main thing is if Sam Bradford can stay healthy. So that's the kind of thing, if you're looking at, it's just hard because when I'm trying to think of this team, I'm thinking I'm gonna get Bradford for maybe 2 to 3 games. He's gonna have to go have his knee drained, and then Glennon's gonna be put into the game, and Glennon's probably gonna implode the offense for the next 5. So I don't really. It really depends on Sam Bradford's health. If Sam Bradford stays healthy, then he can dink and dunk to Johnson. He's going to be able to get the ball to Larry Fitzgerald. And, Christian Kirk's going to be involved in this offense, J.J. Nelson, the other wide receivers. So, I think it really depends on the health of Sam Bradford. Can Sam Bradford stay healthy? And if he doesn't, I think that's kind of what dictates his offense. I think, Mike Glennon is not good enough to get it done. Obviously, I don't think Rosen's ready. Rosen's, probably someone that you bring in halfway through the year or, towards the end of the year if things aren't looking well. And then you talk about their tight ends, Jermaine Gresham, Ricky Seals-Jones, pretty good players there. Guys that were a lot better in college than they've been in the pros, but good players. And then I talked a little bit about the offensive line. then you talk about their defense. I think their defense is obviously the strong point of this team. Chandler Jones, very good player, played I think at the Patriots a couple years ago. Marcus Golden, another good one. Deion Buchanan, guy who played cornerback safety-ish at Washington State, but he's became a linebacker since he's been in the NFL. Hassan Reddick, I think their first or second round pick last year. Josh Bynes is their middle linebacker. They also have Scooby Wright on this team, kid that played at Arizona a couple years ago. That was pretty promising. They still have Patrick Peterson, Marcus Williams, who they added, Budda Baker, who was I think one of the better special teams guys. I think he was a Pro Bowler for the special teams. So Budda Baker, he got out of Washington, real good player. Antonio Bethea. So this team definitely, I think, digressed in certainly some areas. We talked about the quarterback. They lost Tyrann Mathieu, but they did add, Budda Baker, Antoine Bethea, some guys to replace that. They still have Patrick Peterson in the secondary, who's one of the better cornerbacks in the league. Not a terrible linebacking core, not the best, but not terrible, and then an all right defensive line. So, I'm concerned with the Cardinals. I mean, I think it's definitely a rebuild year. I think definitely the other three teams in the division are better than them. So I think it's going to be tough. I think Bradford's a good Band-Aid for right now, but how healthy is he going to be able to stay? This is a team that was 8-8 last year. I don't see them being 8-8 again. We talk about their draft class, not a real deep draft class, but I think they had a good draft. When you talk about Josh Rosen, you're able to get him at like 10 or so. If you would have told them that they were going to be able to get Josh Rosen at 10 or 11 whenever they got him, they probably wouldn't have believed you back in May or so, because Rosen was one of those top guys. Christian Kirk, a really good wide receiver out of A&M. Now, I look at him as kind of a slot guy, and Larry Fitzgerald plays a lot of slot. So either maybe Larry, moves out to that X, or, we'll see how they get Christian Kirk into the lineup. Mason Cole, a center out of Michigan. Chase Edmonds, this guy was an FCS running back. This guy was, was good on film. Didn't get to see a whole lot since he was FCS, but he looked good in the time that I saw him out of Fordham. Chris Campbell, cornerback out of Penn State. And then Corey Cunningham, tackle out of Cincinnati. So just some things I talked about this last offseason of, what I thought that they should do. Obviously, a quarterback for the future. Obviously they did that with Rosen. They've got rid of all their quarterbacks. I think Stan and Gabbard are gone. When they brought in Glennon and they brought in Bradford. Wide receiver depth. Larry's getting up there in age. Need another X. They didn't really add another X. I guess they really like the Christian Kirk kid, and they kind of look at him. I think he's going to be kind of a slot guy into the future. Address the tight end situation. Obviously, Troy Nicholas is gone. They had Ricky Seals-Jones, who they added. He was, I think, a free agent who they re-added. And then Jermaine Gresham was already on this team as well. I'm pretty sure O-line depth. They lost a little bit of O-line, added a little bit back, and then I just said draft defense. And they didn't draft defense really at all other than a cornerback. So I thought they should solidify the defense a little bit more. They did add a little bit in the free agency, but I don't really think it's going to be that good of a year for the Cardinals. I think this is definitely a rebuild year. These guys are back with the Browns and the Jets. As far as this time period is to build Rosen, get Rosen going. The only thing that's different to me about the Cardinals is the fact that they have people like Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson. I guess guys that are fantasy players that are going to have fantasy implications, and it's going to be hard to trust them knowing that they're not on that great of a team. It's going to be hard for me to trust David Johnson this year with the offensive line that he has in front of him. So we'll see. We'll see how he does this year. But I think definitely a transition year for the Cardinals. Building towards the future, for sure.
Niggas won't talk, what they gon' say? I hit the pedal to that motherfucker break. Celebrate, freaky bitches love the money I make. And to live like this, you motherfuckers gotta pay. So let that shit burn.